It's great to welcome to the program today Senator Cory Booker, Democratic Senator representing New Jersey since 2013. Senator, so good to have you on. I don't know exactly where to start, but I think maybe one place would be in thinking about the next 3 years and 364 days. And much has been written about the resistance the first time around was not quite enough. We need a more robust opposition. When they lost in 2020, they built this media ecosystem, an activist ecosystem, and money was pouring in rather than people saying, let's sit on the sidelines. What's your assessment overall right now about sort of the mood of the opposition and the tactics that you would suggest we employ over the next 2 and 4 years?
Well, you asked me that question, and two things immediately popped into my head. The first, I just want to say that like Democrats did a lot of things wrong over the last 4 years, and somehow ended up in a circumstance where people just did not trust them to be able to deliver real results for their lives and their families' lives. It's as simple as that. When people came down to make a decision about what is best for my family or my community or my prosperity, Democrats, I don't trust them. Now, that said, it wasn't a wildly landslide of an election. I heard Donald Trump yesterday lying through his teeth, claiming he had the biggest victory. He didn't get the majority of votes. He got more popular votes than Kamala Harris, but he didn't. The majority of Americans voted against him. But that said, this was a time that I believe if Americans really felt the Democrats had their best interest on the issues that mattered most to them, we would have resoundingly won that election. I do want to point out it had mixed results. There are a lot of my colleagues in the Senate who won in states that also Donald Trump won. That rarely happens where in a state that a president won, the Senate candidate of that president's party lost. So in many ways, the brand of people like Tammy Baldwin, the brand of people like Ruben Gallego, the feeling people had about those leaders was, I trust you to have my back or my family's back. And so in this time where Trump is walking in, a lot of people want to know what's the anti-Trump strategy. And my focus is not the anti-Trump strategy. My focus is fighting for Americans, doing things that make them safer, stronger, and more prosperous. The Democratic Party should define themselves by what they stand for, not by who they stand against. And if Donald Trump comes after your health care, if he comes after your Social Security, if he comes after your Medicare, if he comes after your public education, those are the things we should fight for because we're fighting for the American people. We're fighting for issues. But I'm tired of this tribal country that we live in, where parties are defining themselves in contrast to each other. Now, that said, as a guy who beat a big political machine in the state of New Jersey to win the seat, we had to have really good strategy electorally as well. And I think, as I'm telling the United States senators, and I've taken on a position in leadership in my Senate Democratic caucus, is guys, you are not communicating or talking to voters because you think that we live in a communication world that is where it was in the 1980s. The reality is most voters get their information from these things. I spend most of my time. I've cut cable, so I'm not seeing your ads that you're putting up. We have to become a much more digitally aware set of leadership, and it's hard. Chuck Schumer, who's allowed me to ascend to this position, he and I had long conversations. I said, Chuck, you still have a flip phone, sir. We've got to start talking more about how to be on these platforms where voters are getting much of their news and information, and then having the mechanisms with which to communicate in addition to the right message. And I, for one, believe the message is not the resistance. The message is, you will see me every single day getting up and doing everything I can so you can keep more of your hard-earned dollars, so that you can have better health care, that you can have a nation where we don't spray chemicals on your foods that are banned in other countries, that we can fight for housing and to make housing more affordable so that the very idea of the American dream can be achievable for your generation. That's what people want to hear. They don't want to hear how much I might hate Donald Trump or what have you. That to me is the wrong message.
You mentioned the communication strategy and the smartphones, and I think this is very interesting. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was invited to the White House and met with now former President Biden and some of the communication officials to do a sort of like what went wrong sort of thing from my perspective as someone on kind of this side of the independent media communication side. And what was most alarming maybe was not that they didn't know what went wrong. It was that they did just a few weeks after the election. And, you know, one of the things that we talked about was that this MAGA world very successfully built kind of this space where it's cool to be part of it, right? Trump as a candidate hung out for hours with the Nelk boys and Lex Friedman and Joe Rogan and the political podcasts and the non-political podcasts. And one of the things that I worry about is if in September of 2028, I start getting the emails from different staffers and communications people, it's kind of too late. And so in a way, if there's something they did right starting in 2021, was they started really building out this ecosystem then, and the growth of Turning Point USA and the Daily Wire and all of these organizations. Is there some way to organize this on the left, not as an sort of acute resistance in time, but more as like, we need 4 years of this to be in the right place 4 years from now? I don't know who organizes that.
Well, again, this idea that the Democratic Party is some hegemonic command and control top-down organization is just wrong. We all know that. There
Right.
are the Democratic Governors Association, the Democratic House members have an organization, and so on and so forth. But this is going to be a 4 years of leadership vacuum in which I'm hoping new people rise up in the party and begin to help it to become a 21st century party in terms of its mechanisms it uses to deliver the message. Now, I remember when Kamala Harris's ideas were polled, the policies of Kamala Harris were polled blindly next to the policies of Donald Trump. And people overwhelmingly selected the policies of Kamala Harris because
Right.
most Americans, want universal background checks for guns. They may not want they want to preserve their right to own a gun, but they believe that to stop criminals from getting hands on guns, we need to do things like universal background checks or even licensing. You need a license to buy a car. Why not? That's overwhelmingly 70% of people agree with that. Reproductive rights, 70, 80%. We've seen that in these red states that are voting to preserve Roe v. Wade. I could go through the things that show that Democrats are right on the policies,
Yes.
but somehow we are failing to let people understand and communicate in a way that gives them that trust. One of these, and I've been doing a lot of postmortem and having people come in to talk to me. And one person got me kind of upset. They're like, trust over truth. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, integrity means a lot to me. Well, they said, Senator Booker, you don't understand. Like, people want to know they can trust you before they'll believe you. And so I'm going to do everything I can to do exactly what you say, is to create a community of people that can come together and connect in a way that could shine a light on the good things, the good efforts, the noble deeds, the real work that are being done. And you and I both know, because we come out of a different era, that what we're doing right now is the present and the future. I learned this when I was a mayor of the city of Newark, and my city had a horrible brand problem. The traditional media would only tell stories about crime and corruption, and we had a lot of it. I was the first, mayor not to be indicted since the 1960s, and we were battling down. We eventually won to get our murder rate down, and then Conan O'Brien on a traditional media channel goes on TV and says that I hear Newark, New Jersey has a new healthcare program, and I had done this new big rollout to get my people a big discount on prescription drugs. And I thought he was going to celebrate that. And he goes, well, I think the best healthcare program for the city of Newark is a bus ticket out of town. Now, I knew immediately that it was a gift because I was about to show that new media is going to beat old media. And this is back in the days that Twitter was young.
Yep.
But I did a video basically making the joke that Conan O'Brien, you've insulted the city of Newark. You're hereby banned from Newark Airport. You're on the no-fly list. Try JFK, buddy. And the video went viral. And suddenly, for the first time, there are video cameras, traditional media is outside City Hall, not looking for blood on the sidewalk or somebody doing a perp walk. They were there to talk to the mayor about did he really ban somebody from Newark Airport? And I used it as an opportunity. It was a joke, but we played into the joke, and next thing you know, it became America's number one trending story. Conan O'Brien had to respond, but it was my showing that new media was going to beat old media. And now you have influencers that get more views in a week than Fox, CNN, and MSNBC combined. We are in a different era. And somebody, or I should say, a community of people that are right on the policies need to figure out how this party, for whatever loose terms you might use to describe us, can begin to communicate to where the people are. Going to the Senate floor and giving a speech in the 1950s, like when Mr. Smith went to Washington, could capture the nation's attention. Now, nobody hears that except for the 15 people that watch C-SPAN. But if you elevate that same speech in an ecosystem that is hungry for ideas and actions that help Americans get better housing, better health care, that help people have better access to affordable college education, that create a more just and fair society, that in the ecosystem, especially if we're connected, could go a lot farther. And that's what I'm trying to create. I'm trying to bring my party into the 21st century and stop defining us by what we're against. I disagree with, in fact, I've chosen my side. Humanity for a long time has had a battle. The battle is between those people who believe in us versus them and those people who believe in just us. I believe in just us. I'm tired of positioning my identity based upon what the Republicans are doing. It's about the people of America. I don't care how you voted. Are we as a party fighting for your family? Do you trust that or not? And that's what I think this next election in 28 is going to be about. And it starts right now in 2025.
You mentioned Twitter or X. It was notable that the sort of new gilded tech oligarchs were together and hanging out at the inauguration. Of course, Twitter has become X under Elon Musk and just a repository for amplifying conspiracy and right-wing messaging. Mark Zuckerberg from Meta has announced that the fact-checking program is over. They are moving moderation teams from California to Texas for a better political climate, as he described it. Bezos was there, owns the Washington Post, which decided they all of a sudden are not going to make an endorsement this time around, right? It's so there is the concern that now that hopefully everybody is realizing the importance of these platforms, other than Blue Sky, which is very small right now, they're kind of all moving to, we really want to be friendly with Trump and get invited to the White House. That seems like a major concern to me for the next few years.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say I disagree with these policies. And I haven't had a chance to engage with some of these platforms, but I remember, I think it was Myanmar, where Facebook had this spread of lies that led to horrific actions. When media is spreading lies or hate, we saw it in places in Africa. In fact, with the Hutu and the Tutsi, they used a communications platform, then it was radio, to spread hate and violence. And so I can't say that I disagree with these policies, that not having some kind of fact checker, that if people are using those platforms to spread hate, lies, or incite violence, that we shouldn't be doing something about it. I think there is still a place in this world where virtue and truth. Now, how we understand that, and I'm not advocating for censorship, I'm advocating for responsibility. But that aside, I think what you're describing to me is somewhat problematic in the sense of, I first of all, I'm a United States senator. It won't surprise you that I know Jeff Bezos. Mark Zuckerberg, I would consider him a friend. I know him as well. But I had a problem with when I look up at a stage where a president is being sworn in and it is a picture of priorities and who is vaunted. And you ran a election under this idea that we're fighting for the people. And the billionaires that were on that stage, to me, the message is really problematic. Who will have a voice? Who will have influence? And this is coming in the backdrop of you just had an administration as the 45th president, where your signature policy was a tax bill whose benefits overwhelmingly went to the 1% and was unpopular with Americans, where it fueled even more stratification of wealth in our country. And even some people, because of how tax brackets were moved around, ended up paying more, working class people. And so for me, as I sat there knowing this Trump tax plan 2 is coming down the pike, and the way you created a stage, and again, I have no problem with people who risk their capital and get a reward. I am all for this idea. And I think when our party demonizes success, it really veers off to me.
Yes.
But we now have a system that is rigged through its tax code, where the wealthiest of the wealthy have all kind of ways of compounding their wealth. And it's actually stealing from our wealth as a country, because Trump's first tax plan blew a $3 trillion hole in our budget. So as I'm sitting there knowing that the first time, or maybe the first time, they use something called reconciliation, which is to get around the filibuster here in the Senate, is to push a tax plan where some estimates now is it could cause a $4 trillion hole in our budget, in order to, again, shift wealth through tax expenditures to the wealthiest of the wealthy in our country. To me, there was an incongruency and problematic when you ran a campaign about lowering grocery prices. And so I was left with a feeling of that it was very problematic, and that the Democratic Party better get ready for this fight. We were able to win our first fight against Trump when his first big policy move was to take down the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
Well, now we are going to be seeing a tax plan that will inevitably, it seems, blow a bigger hole in our national debt. Trillions and trillions of dollars for our children and grandchildren are going to have to pay for and be poorer because of it. Money that we could be using to invest in infrastructure, education, science, technology, and research. By the way, tax dollars invested in those things produces a return for taxpayers. But instead of this, is going to be another shift of wealth, so that people, friends of mine who make extraordinary amounts of money, are paying less in taxes, percentage of their income, than I pay, than teachers pay, than secretaries, plumbers pay. And that's the realness that's at stake. And the symbol of I had some problems with the symbol of that stage and the way he set it up and who was important for him to show up there. It was very interesting to me to see who got that special invitation to sit behind him during his inauguration.
Senator, I know you've got to run. One other quick thing. As contrived and fabricated as the issue has been, would it be a good idea, for example, for us to have a clear answer when they pull the "what is a woman" on us, as an example of this sort of thing that is inevitably going to, again, be dropped in our lap time and again?
Yeah, I feel that we are having these conversations that are on their terms and have
Yes,
nothing to do with the everyday reality of Americans. And I'm going
correct.
to use it on an issue that I got asked more times than I can imagine, is what do you think about CRT?
Hmm.
I didn't know what critical race theory even was. And I've got more degrees, as my dad used to say, than the month of July, and I'm not hot. And I had to go back and read what exactly is critical race theory, or DEI, or environment, government, whatever it is about the acronym that for focusing on the environment. And so it's one of these things that they take language that is not in any way charged, and they charge it in a way that makes it toxic to have a rational conversation. So let's be clear. A fraction of 1% of the American population, and even a smaller fraction than that, are trans kids. And so for them to have literally hundreds of millions of dollars being spent in the last election with ads targeting that population, to me is nothing short of outrageous and distracting from the issues that are most important to the people I serve in New Jersey and around this nation. So the short answer to your question is absolutely. In terms of political tactics, when you get asked a question like that, yeah, you need to look somebody in the eye and say, this is utter bullshit that we are having this conversation, when the real issue with children in America is that we have too many kids living below the poverty line. The real problem in America for our kids is that we see sicknesses and illnesses that they used to call things like adult set diabetes. And now we have a quarter of our children who are diabetic or pre-diabetic. There are so many. The number one cause of death for our children is gun violence. Mm. And so yet somehow they were able to make the conversation about such a fractional small percentage of the population in a way that ultimately these kids have some of our highest suicide rates, some of the highest rates of kids being bullied and tormented. We still live in a nation where a third of gay kids report missing school at some point because of fear. And so how do we get it so twisted that the Democratic Party is not on offense on something like this for what they're doing in manufacturing an issue and whipping it up across their ecosystem in a way that distracts us from talking about kids dying of gun violence, kids being terribly sick with chronic diseases, or kids not getting a high quality public education or getting access to high quality, affordable childcare. These are the issues that are pressing kids and families that most households are concerned with.
Senator Cory Booker, really appreciate your time, and we will be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm grateful for you. Thanks for the opportunity.